Why the right needs conspiracy theories? Um, it's very interesting question, and it has a very simple answer. The disastrous failure of all of their ideas, and not just that, not that they just fail, they just blow up in everyone's face uh, in a manner that any objective fact based analysis is going to show that their ideas are just absolute garbage and are destructive, selfish, greedy, short sighted, reckless, racist, malicious, whatever you want to put on any of their ideas. You can put any bad adjective you like on them. Um, for 25, 30 years at least, the Republican Party has called climate change, man-made climate change, and the need to take assertive action to cut back on carbon emissions as a hoax. Just recently, we've had record wildfires year after year after year in the western half of the United States. In the state of Oregon, in the first 120 years of its recorded history, there were 20 wildfires over 100,000 acres. In the last 25 years, there's been 26 wildfires over 100,000 acres. That's an increase of more than 600%. Their disastrous excavation industry first policies of the Republican Party in the number one, the US was the number one greenhouse polluter and the number one creator of emissions up until 10, 15 years ago when China took over that distinction, shall we say, that mark. And we've done nothing. We've done nothing. So their climate policy is these fires and hurricanes and droughts and floods and the various, the worst seasonal storms. Everything the scientists have predicted. I remember I was in grade school. They said each and every single thing that has come to pass. Warming oceans, rising oceans, melting polar ice caps, worse seasonal storms, worse droughts, worse fires, worse floods, worse hurricanes, all of these things that they predicted has happened. And the right has been wrong on every single one of these naysaying ideas. The same people that they used in the cigarette industry, they recycled the same bogus PhDs to write bogus papers and articles claiming that the science was not settled on man-made climate change and its disastrous impact. That's just one aspect of their failed ideology. Healthcare. Their attacks on socialized medicine. The United States' healthcare system answered how bad it is. Trump was a big contributing factor. But on top of that, answered how bad it is, how the private insurance mafia imposed on the U.S. at double and triple the cost of every other developed first world nation. Failed miserably. Inflation since 1980, cost of healthcare has increased 6 times the rate of inflation. This is the benighted free market, private health insurance, private hospital, pharma company, insurance policies that the Republicans want. It's their opposition to public socialized healthcare. That's sucking 1 out of every $6 in the economy. It's bleeding America dry. None of their tax cuts trickled down. They never trickled down. The wealth just trickled up. Never. No study has found, and our own experience has shown, that tax cuts for rich and the big corporations. Where's the golden age of the Trump tax cuts? He's the only president who gave the massive tax cuts, and on top of that, we had the big collapse. Partially from his horrific pandemic response, partially from just him being such a bad president and the toxic ideas of himself and his party. Where was the great middle class boom under Reagan? All that wealth was in the 80s was famous for it being dragged to the top and not reaching anybody else, not the middle class, not the working class, not the poor. Only the top. and a sliver of professional class underneath them. So their economic policies did not deliver the trickle down. We're still waiting for it. Every study shows that tax cuts do not increase the GDP, wages, jobs, productivity. They only increase wealth inequality and blow gigantic holes in fiscal budgets. That's it. Their military policy, how they led us into a $5 trillion never-ending war in Iraq to hunt imaginary WMDs. The last two Republican presidents presided over Great Depressions. No factual record, no factual analysis by any objective party can look at the Republican Party and say that any of their policies have worked, and if on top of that have been, if not been disastrous. We know that Trump had the worst COVID response in the world. He's the only reason that Americans died at 5.5 times the global average. Even though that percentage has come down since the vaccinations have occurred, when Trump was president, Americans were dying at 5.5 times the global average for COVID cases. And it was because he was the bozo who made masks a partisan issue. He was the bozo who encouraged super spreader events and large non-mask wearing events. We know Herman Cain, a senior figure in his administration at one time, died after attending one of those events and getting COVID. We know that 900 Secret Service agents got COVID because this dumbass wouldn't wear a mask. We know that he got his own wife and 2 of his own kids sick with COVID. He couldn't even keep his own family, house, workplace safe from COVID. The White House was a hot zone of COVID infection. And this was under the leadership of Herr Führer Trump. He's the sole reason hundreds of thousands of people died needlessly, because he turned mask wearing and holding big maskless events into a partisan dick-waving issue. And his followers are the stupidest bioterrorists and most damaging bioterrorists on the planet. So there's all these conspiracy theories that the right generates about the vaccine, about climate being a myth, about liberals, Hillary being a Satanist, pedophile, cannibal, all kinds of nonsense, Biden being senile. All of these theories are to cover up for the massive, disastrous failure of the Republican Party and the American right, and really how they've descended to become a terrorist organization whose members and leaders should be hunted and imprisoned. That's the end of this one.